Welcome to Thumbnail, a now web show about visual arts. I'm Joe Rosher, illustrator, animator, and adjunct professor.
And I'm Louis Rosignol, visual artist. And so we haven't been on for a while. We kind of took August off because we were both so busy, and we had some audio podcasts that we were able to release. Um, and so hopefully we're back now, and we'll be doing these semi regularly. We're going to shoot for every other week, and then just see how that goes with our schedules. Hopefully that will work out, and we'll be able to take maybe your suggestions for topics moving forward. But today we're going to talk about something that I think almost everybody that is like a creative, and probably other people too, deal with, which is imposter syndrome and comparing yourself to others, which is kind of related to imposter syndrome. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if there's a better way to even put it. Like, it's just like feeling like you're a fraud or something.
Yeah, I don't know if this goes away. I don't think it goes away ever. I've always had it. I've had it as a student, had it as a professional, and I feel like I still have it sometimes. I'll be in front of the classroom teaching about illustration, or I'll be here just talking to you guys about art, and I do feel imposter syndrome often.
It's like, well, even Albert Einstein and Maya Angelou, people like that who were like, the top of their professions, right? And they basically claimed that they felt having imposter syndrome or feeling like they've tricked people into thinking they're better than they are or something.
Because I wonder if it's because we're we're constantly getting better, we're constantly evolving, changing our practice. That maybe I wonder if that's the reason why we always feel like we're an imposter because we're always improving, always changing. Um, I don't there isn't a pinnacle to hit. There isn't the best
Right.
point. There isn't like the highest level you can hit um in art. So I think that might be why.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, I do feel like you're right in that it's kind of like accomplishment resistant, in that no matter how much you accomplish or how much you do, you could still feel it. It's not like you're gonna get to a level and be like, "Okay, now I feel like I belong."
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like, oops, I should have probably turned my phone off. Sorry about that. So anyway, the thing I wanted to mention to you is, have you ever heard, because I think this is a really good way of putting it. Have you ever heard I think it's an analogy called the gold and garbage machine, which I heard a couple different ways, but it's a great way of kind of describing it.
Golden
Have
garbage.
the gold and garbage, not golden garbage.
The
So I
gold
can,
and garbage. No, I
yeah,
haven't.
I'll explain it. So basically, what it is it with creativity or anything like in the creative fields, we kind of have this machine that spits out gold and garbage. And our machine, so when we first start creating whatever we're doing, it pumps out a ton of garbage, hardly any gold, mostly all garbage, right?
Hmm.
And then eventually, if we keep, well, most people will just get discouraged and they'll just be like, okay, my machine's broken. It's not spitting out anything but garbage. But if you continue and persist with your creativity, what ends up happening is eventually your machine will start working better, and you'll spit out mostly garbage, but then a little bit of gold will come out. And
Hmm.
you'll be like, oh, I see. And the more your machine works and the more you continue with your creativity, the better that ratio gets, and the more gold you get and the less garbage you get, right? And
Okay.
eventually what will happen is other people will recognize, hey, that's a lot of gold. I like what you're creating. And they'll want to buy your art or whatever. And in your mind, you're thinking, yeah, but I've been creating garbage for all these years. Like, that's all you can focus on. Like, and they're focused on the gold that you're now making, and all you're focused on is all the garbage that you've made over the years. And you're still making garbage because your machine, although it's pumping out more gold, all of us are still producing garbage,
Yeah.
right?
I guess it's becoming okay with that, and maybe just expect that from the beginning, and I think we've said this before, but it really is a numbers game. Just keep pumping out the garbage, and but what if you changed your mindset before you start working that this is going to be garbage? Is that going to would that change how you feel?
Yeah. And you know what another problem is too? I think you're right. If you changed how you felt and expected garbage, then if you happen to get gold, it was like great,
It's
right?
a nice surprise.
Yeah. But
Not that
what
you're trying to make something bad. It's more like go into it thinking it's just a sketch. I could throw this away if I needed to. If it doesn't come out good, it's not the end of the world. Let's just move to the next one.
yeah. I think one of the main problems too, and why this analogy is a good one, is because of social media. Like most artists only post their gold.
Hmm.
And so you're seeing all this gold everywhere on social media from your artists that you love. And you're thinking, oh, they must not produce garbage. I'm the only one producing garbage.
Right.
And but you know too that you're only showing your gold.
Yeah.
So we have to remember that, like, okay, just because all the stuff that they're showing is good, that doesn't mean that's all they're producing. In fact, I can't tell you how much stuff I produce that I don't post, and I'm sure the same with you. Like,
Oh, right. All my sketchbooks, all my sketches don't look good. They're not finished, but they're not meant to look good. They're not meant to be seen, and they're meant to basically just be notes for me going forward. Or I'm going to use these sketches as the baseline foundation and building block to the final piece. And so I don't uh, yeah, that's where I'm more loose, and I guess I don't show it. I should show it because people, even when I'm out at a show or something and I have a sketchbook out or like a fair type show, people are drawn to what I'm doing, like with the sketchbook, and want to see the roughness and the process. So yeah, maybe that is part of it. We're only showing the gold. Maybe we need to show more garbage.
yeah, I think the problem is like almost have to convince everyone to do it. But you know what? I think people do, like you're saying, people are drawn to it. And so if we start posting stuff that's like, it's not garbage. I don't mean to just say it's either gold or garbage as if that's the only two options. A lot of times there's stuff in your sketchbook that is garbage but has little gold moments in it.
Yeah,
And so when we see other people's stuff like that, we go, it makes us go, oh, I'm not the only one that sketchbook isn't perfect. And so I think imposter syndrome would become way less if we were able to see more of everyone's what everything they're producing rather than just the best of what they produce.
right. How often would you say you sift through your own garbage? Your own visual garbage from your
I s-
art.
yeah, and I guess don't know exactly what you mean by sift through it, but I will if you want to tell
Yeah,
me.
I could explain it. So I I keep I keep trying to resist the urge to throw out garbage, like my garbage drawings, um, right away. So that's why I transitioned all my sketchbooks to hardbound. So it's not as easy to rip out a page. So it's so just trying to get in the practice of moving on, just turning the page and keeping the garbage there, because you never know if that can become gold. Over time with like almost compacting garbage makes that one piece into a diamond. Like it's
Yeah.
it's kind of like a Cole effect. And so sometimes I'll look back into my old sketchbooks and look at something that I would have definitely tossed,
Yep.
but something about it now triggers something new now. And so sometimes even sifting through the garbage, you could find you could find gold that
Yeah,
was
I
missed.
I think you're right. So the way I do that is, um, I'll oftentimes will rip out pages of my book before I even start drawing, but and then I draw on them. But what I've been doing lately is I kind of have two different piles, not or a drawer, two different drawers. And so if a drawing that I do comes out good and I really like it, then it goes into like the that pile of good drawings that I consider to be done, I guess. And then if like it kind of doesn't come out that great, I kind of have been storing those and then sifting through them because oftentimes I'll cut them up and you repurpose parts of them. Like I like this side of the drawing, and maybe I can like glue it onto a different drawing and kind of mismatch them together. And so I'm trying to take, like, okay, I have a piece of paper I drew on and there's a little bit of gold in there. So I'm trying to use that gold, whether I cut it out and put it somewhere else. Um, and then I'll discard of the whatever is not used. But I know what you mean. It's like it you don't want to just classify things like this is crap, this is great, and just get rid of all the stuff that you think is not good. Because I also have come back to drawings I didn't like and ended up actually liking them later
Hmm.
and thinking like this is actually pretty good. I don't know why I put it in this pile,
Hmm. Yeah,
which is kind of weird.
that's definitely happened to me too. Um, so one thing I would suggest, I think it is helpful to have like a binary system right away, because otherwise all these ideas just kind of start getting stored in your brain and nowhere to go. It's like a dam of
Right.
ideas where it just build up, build up, build up. Sometimes I feel like I need to just release the dam,
Yeah.
get these ideas out, quick binary system, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then when you get to a point where you're stuck, you always have these piles to go back to, and it still be, I want to say it's more original because it's your garbage. You're
Hmm.
not now trying to find inspiration from other things and piece and Frankenstein together things from life. You've already filtered it. It's already gone through your creative filter, and now you can go through it one step further. And I think that helps with originality. I think it helps with creativity, trying to get to a point uh, of interest that might be new for not just you, but might be new for other viewers of your work too.
Yeah. It's also forces you to like push yourself through things that you wouldn't normally have, right? And push yourself further with pieces than you wouldn't have.
Hmm.
Um, but I do like the idea of like saving drawings that you didn't care for. If you're and if people if they join late, like they might be wondering how we got here, but you have to like watch the beginning and when we talked about like the golden garbage machine, which and how it relates to imposter syndrome, because that's what we were talking about. Um, what do you think about comparing yourself to others in general? Because like just real quick, I feel like a lot of times I think like you shouldn't do that, right? You should only compare yourself to how you used to be and to see that way you can see that you're improving. But then on the other hand, like I think, well, you probably should compare yourself to others because that's how you get better.
Yeah, it's tricky. I wish I didn't compare myself to others, but I think I constantly compare myself to others. I
Right.
think it's hard to avoid. I don't think you can avoid that. If you're like if you're in a cave underground, no internet access, and you're only inspired by what you're doing and what you've produced, and then you start to maybe get into that world. But like you said, how do you know? How do you know you're improving? How do you know what to even strive for?
Right.
Sometimes I'll be comparing myself to others. Is okay. Well, why is his or her piece working better than anything I've done? And
Hmm.
study, 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 and realize, oh, that's a really cool technique. I think I could implement in my work seamlessly and enhance the quality for
Yeah.
whatever that may be. And so, like you said, yeah, I think comparing yourself to others does help. Does help make you better, but it is hard to compartmentalize um, that in your brain for it to be a positive thing or a negative thing.
We have to do it in a productive way. It can't just be like comparing yourself to someone else that's really good and then you're just going to get jealous because they're better than you. It has to be like, okay, I'm comparing my work to others to see what I can work on. Like, have you ever heard I think Will Terry talks about like getting a 9 grid, like, like the Brady Bunch setup where at the beginning of the show where you see all their faces in that 9-person grid.
Hmm.
And if you were to take like 8 of your favorite artists' work and put them in the grid and leave the empty space in the middle for a piece of your own work, and then look at the grid and see, does your work hold up? Like, does it actually fit in with those artists, or is it obviously not up to that standard?
Hmm.
And then you know where you have to what you have to work on to get yourself to that point, because you can sit there and compare, okay, these people are really using color in a better way than I'm using. Or um but I when he talks about that, I often think like, okay, well, I could do that with artists I love and feel like garbage about myself. Or you could also do it with artists that are like kind of not great, and then your work would be like the best piece there, and then you'd feel like too good about yourself, right? And obviously you can find 9 artists that basically are on your level. So I think the best thing to do is just to find artists that you really are striving to be, so that you can compare yourself in a way that is productive, and how can I get to that level?
Right. As you were talking about that, I was thinking maybe it's worth doing multiple sets of those, multiple sets of 9 for different categories. One might be, who do you think your direct competition is? Like
Right.
who whose styles fit yours, you think, and do you live in that box? Do you live in that set? Then compare it to, maybe you've looked up to artists in the past that you looked up to, right? Or always looked up to. Put yourself around those too, because maybe you're still striving to be like some, but maybe you've surpassed others. So there could there could be beneficial uh, aha moments there too. But and then maybe even one where you're surrounded by the artists that inspire you, because I know if I did that with artists that inspire me, everyone's so different, and they're
Yeah.
so different for so many different things. So you're not really directly comparing apples to apples anymore. You're just comparing fruits to fruits, and I don't know, their comparable ripeness. How ripe how ripe are these fruits in their own categories alone.
Yeah.
Uh,
You would definitely want to pick artists that are at least somewhat similar to you. Like, you're not going to put like a sculptor up there, and things that just don't match, because you are doing it in a way where you want to compare and contrast and figure out what's going on. As far
right.
as like, and as to, I was thinking, as far as like jealousy goes, when and seeing other artists and being maybe jealous because they're at a different level than you. I always think back to when I was at Mecca and going to school in Mecca. I was 35 years old, and I'm a student there, and all the other people in the class are like 19 or 20 years old. And I remember like a couple of them were like, they said that they wish they could draw at the level that I was at. And all I could think was, you're just looking at like one thing. You're looking at my skill level, which is a little bit above yours, but you're not thinking about the fact that I'm twice your age. And by the time you get to my age, you're going to be better than I am now, because you'll have way more training. Like, so you pick the part that you're jealous of, right?
Right.
You're not jealous that I'm 36, because I would trade the skill level I have to be 19 again right now.
Hmm.
So you have to remember that when you compare yourself to other artists too. You might think their work is great and be jealous of certain aspects, or their following on social media is way bigger than yours. But you wouldn't be, if you knew everything about the artist, you probably would be happy to be who you are. And do you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but
It definitely makes sense, and I think it's again, it's a perspective thing, right? And so when I look at an artist that I'm jealous of, let's say, uh, and I'm trying to get to their point, I'm I'm blind to the fact of what their path was. I just want to get I just want to get there faster. Not only for, geez, it's I guess that's partly my uh competitive side, where I wanna get better than who I see, but at the same time I want to have done it faster than they did, you
Yeah,
know? And so if I found out what their timeline was, like let's say they are 40 and I'm 32 and I wanted to be at their level, I'd probably want to be at their level by, I don't know, 5 years sooner, and then
right.
that would be my goal. Like, can I get there in the next 2 years? Can I get there in the next 3 years? Um,
Which that's fine to have realistic goals like that. I just was trying to, I think that that's actually healthy. But at least you're being realistic and you're not saying like, I wish I want to be there right now because you recognize that they've had 8 more years than you or whatever to get there. And when you think about it like that, then you probably think, yeah, but I'm actually in this area, I'm doing better than them. And they're 8 years older than me or whatever, however old. Like you look at Ralph, if you look at like Ralph Steadman, right, one of the best illustrators ever, um, at the level he's at right now, he's probably worth like $25 million. He could do whatever he wanted for art. He doesn't have to take any jobs ever again. But he's also 70 years old. Like, and maybe by the time you're 70, you'd be like that. But it's like that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, okay, so you wouldn't want to be 70 right now if you could, even with the $25 million and having that great of a portfolio. If you could snap your fingers right now and have that, but you have to be 70, you wouldn't do it, right?
right. Well, how do you feel on the flip side when you find out an artist that you admire is
Younger.
20 years younger than you? Yeah.
That's frustrating. Well, that's just that I just assume that they have awful family life. I just have to pretend that there's something really bad that I wouldn't want, even if there's not. But the fact is, they probably do have something that you wouldn't want that's part of their life.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting thought too. It's you can look at a celebrity and be like, "Oh, I love their lives based off of their Instagram and what I see in the tabloids and blah blah blah, and they live in a big fancy house and great cars and have tons of cash." But then you try to put yourself into their shoes realistically, and you wonder, how happy are they compared to how happy you are now? Or would you, like, what kind of pressure is there to always be in the limelight and to always have people watching you at all moments of your life? And I don't know if I would trade places with something like that, if, when you really look into it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's always stuff that you could, if you actually knew the whole picture, there's things that you could think of. And I mean, obviously, we're talking more about like an artist and skill level that we're looking at, um, or even like a following. I've seen visual artists that have like a huge following,
Hmm.
and they're doing art that I don't even think is that good. And they have like a million followers.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I could say like, "Oh, I'm jealous they have a million followers." But at the same time, like I wouldn't want to be doing the art they're doing in order to have a million followers because it doesn't connect with me. I don't care about it.
Right.
So, and I'd rather be doing the art that I'm doing and have way less followers.
Right.
So I don't know. I think imposter syndrome and comparing yourself to others is obviously something that everyone deals with. Although I read the study I was kind of preparing for this podcast and I read like a really stupid article that had like this shows you how stupid surveys are and how basically useless surveys are. It says we reviewed 62 different surveys about imposter syndrome. So 62 studies, different studies about imposter syndrome. And after reviewing them, we found that between 9 and 82% of people feel like they have imposter syndrome. So between 9 and 82%, like, okay, so you'd learn nothing basically, because
Right.
that's like basically either barely anybody has it or almost everybody has it. That's what we learned. So all that money in those studies just to find out that. So the point is, don't take too much stock if you read one study of something, because you know if you just one study that said 9% of people had it, you'd think, okay, well, hardly anybody has it. But there's
Right.
obviously other studies out there that say 82% of people have it. So
It's ridiculous.
it made me laugh because I'm like, that just says everything you need to know about surveys. It also probably depends on the group of people they asked. Like if you ask a certain group of people, you're more likely to get a yes, I have felt imposter syndrome. And the way you ask it, maybe the questions you ask them, maybe will
Yeah,
make them more likely.
yeah. I think it's how it's asked. I think 100% of people have imposter syndrome, no matter what field you're in,
Yeah.
and so much of it is how much can you hide it? How much can you hide the fact that you feel like an imposter? And so sometimes confidence is just hiding your vulnerabilities.
How often do you feel it? Like, because when I think of imposter syndrome, I just can't talk. When I think of it, I think of just that thought of like, um, well, people are just going to figure out that I'm terrible and I don't have any skill, right? That's like kind of the imposter syndrome thought, right? Like I'm a fraud and I'm only showing my good work. If they saw everything I was producing, they would know that I don't have any talent. Um, but I don't have that thought that often. But I do have it. Maybe like every few weeks, it'll come up in my mind. Um, is it something that is regular in your mind, or has it been more regular in the past and you've managed to like tamp it down?
Uh, I would say it's very regular, but I've categorized it differently, and so now instead of thinking of it as a negative thing, it's just um, having the realization that it's everything I do isn't going to be perfect. If I do this thing again, it will be better, you know. So, but how many times am I willing to do something again? Not many.
Right.
I just realistically, I don't want to do this thing over and over and over
The
again.
same thing. Right.
And so, as much as I know that fact that I could make anything better, uh, there's a point where I'll stop and just accept it for what it is, uh, and abandon it. You know. So what's the saying? Art is never finished. It's only abandoned. I think I want to say Leonardo da Vinci said that. I can't remember, but and I've just accepted that. I just accepted that um, my imposter syndrome. I guess it's not so much a I don't view it so much as a negative thing, and I try to transition that into what what I do have, and what I have is experience, and so I might not be better than someone. I might not be better than uh, even my students. I'm not necessarily better than them. I just have more experience, and so I can help guide guide them to the next steps. Um, but that doesn't mean I'm better.
That's funny you bring up the fact about students, because when I taught the sketchbook class through Carla's website, and I'm doing just for everyone too, I'm doing a portrait one that's going to be out in a few weeks, and Joe's going to be teaching one too. Um, but anyway, when I did the sketchbook class, there's during the live 2 week session of the class, the students get like assignment each lesson, and then they can post their assignment, their work on the Facebook group, and I get to look at them and comment on them. And I saw so many like sketches and stuff during the class where the student's piece was like better than the demo I did.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking like, why are they even taking my class? Like they don't need it. But but they're obviously having fun and learning, and they are getting value out of it, so why should I even think that? Like, but it's, like, something that goes through your mind, like, I don't know what they think they're gonna learn from me.
Mm.
Like, look at their work's already pretty good, you know? Like, but and so that kinda kicks in the imposter syndrome a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. But let's go back to being a student, right? So I could have imposter syndrome as a student, being in a critique, and a fellow student's work is on the board, and it's way better, right? And you think, well, why do I have the right to critique this work,
Oh, yeah, that was tough in
right?
critique, I know what you mean.
But no matter how good you are, it doesn't mean you could still see something that they're not seeing. You know, they could just be too close to the work, and you might be a better critiquer than you are a designer or a drawer. You know, like you could still
Right.
be of value, and so even if you feel like an imposter, doesn't mean you have no value.
Yeah, right, you're right with the critique, you could have a great eye for art and not be able to necessarily translate into drawing yourself, so your art isn't as good as your critique skills. When I was in critique, I would take critique from anybody, even if they're like you said, their drawing maybe wasn't as good as mine. The only people I didn't want to get critique from was the people that didn't even do the assignment, and sometimes those were the loudest people in critique. They're sitting there critiquing everyone's work, and they didn't even do it. That would infuriate me, I don't know why,
Mm,
and it was always the same couple of people that just didn't do the assignments, or they would do them, but they didn't get them done on time, so they weren't part of the critique.
hmm
Their work wasn't, but their voice was, that's for sure.
Did you ever feel imposter syndrome when you were giving critiques?
Mm, that's a good question. I was pretty quiet during critiques unless it had to have been like I noticed something that was pretty big that I thought that they should know about. Like I wasn't the type of person that would just come up with something to say just to hear my own voice in a
Mm,
critique. Um, and so I would whenever I was talking during a critique, it would be something I was pretty confident that I was right about. You know what I mean? Like I really think this you need to change the value between these two things because they're too close and it doesn't pop out enough or something. Um, but in when I was in Mecca, like most of the people that were in the illustration major in the classes that I was in were really pretty good artists, and so the critiques went pretty smooth. Usually, I think it would be more of a challenge if our skill levels were all over the place. You know,
yeah.
how did you feel it was like that when you were in school during critiques?
Thinking back about it, why I asked you is because I don't think I felt imposter syndrome when I was critiquing other people's work.
Hmm,
I felt it more when I was critiquing my own work.
that's
And
interesting.
so the more and more I was in critiques, the more I realized I am seeing things, and I'm able to vocalize what I'm seeing. What I'm doesn't mean how I'm seeing it is the only way. Like it doesn't mean what I'm critiquing is the only solution or if it's
Yeah.
even a problem. But um, uh, maybe because it was maybe because it was so much uh, opinion and subjective, I didn't have a scare of being an imposter. I was just
Right.
trying to relay a first response to something, and I find that to be the most helpful in a critique. You know, just trying to trying to get rid of imposter syndrome, trying to get rid of uh, the thought that anyone's judging what you're thinking, and having the freedom to uh, try to verbally express what you're seeing.
What's
Right.
nice about yeah. What I liked about, critique in general is just the fact that, like, what you're talking about, it is kind of subjective, and there's not really any wrong answers. So usually when you speak up in a school setting, is wrong answers, and so you're maybe nervous, like, am I going to say the wrong thing? But with critique, it's it's your opinion, so it's a valid opinion, even if other people don't agree with it. I
Mm,
will say that I wasn't even thinking about talking about critique today, but I'm kind of glad you brought it up because it reminded me that why imposter syndrome isn't always bad because I can think of somebody in particular it wa that I went to school with, and they thought everything they did was great. You couldn't critique them. Like, they would say you were wrong. They would just say, "No, you're wrong." This like so no matter what they did, they thought it was great. So they obviously didn't have imposter syndrome. They had the exact opposite problem. And you don't want you would if you had to have one or the one or the other, it would be better to have imposter syndrome because that only makes you work harder,
mhm,
makes you want to get to the levels so you don't feel like a fraud anymore. Whereas if you feel like you belong where you're there because you belong there, and everything you do is great, like that's not good either because you're get full of yourself, like you are less likely to improve what you're doing because you think it's already great.
right. The smartest person in the room questions their own thoughts, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think you're right there. I think you I think you need to have it. I think you need to have imposter syndrome. I think it's crucial for art and being an artist.
Yeah. And it forces you to better your game, and like that's why when I said comparing yourself to others is a positive in a lot of ways, like, you know, it ups your game.
Mhm.
Like, Michael Jordan became the best basketball player in the world because he played against people that were better than him, and he kept getting better. If he only played against the worst players, he's not gonna get better. And so
Right.
you've gotta compare your work to people that are better than you so you can see what needs to be worked on.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think this was a great.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think this is always an interesting topic because no matter how many artists I talk to, everybody has said that they felt this. I haven't really talked to anybody that was like, "No, I've never even felt that." I'd like to meet someone if you haven't felt imposter syndrome, you definitely comment because I'm curious, but I'm sure that if you're watching this, you probably have. That's why you clicked on it. Um,
Well, I think
eh,
there's a reason why you don't meet anyone who doesn't have it. Because they don't have the chops to even get your attention in the first place.
that could be. That could be too. Um, and maybe I just try to surround myself with humble people. And so, like, arrogant people, I weed out, and then I don't have to deal with them. Um, but as we go forward, and we're going to try to do more regular podcasts now. So definitely leave comments if you have like topics that you'd like us to talk about, because when you do a regular podcast like we're trying to do, coming up with the topics is the hardest part. And so suggestions are like valued, and we'll definitely get to them if they're good suggestions. So feel free to let us know what you think what you'd like to hear us talk about.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Well, this was awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks
for
for
listening.
joining us.
See you guys later.